Hello everyone and welcome to a really wild game that was played yesterday as part of the Chess24 Banter Blitz session where Daniil, Dubov and Nepomniachtchi played a hand and brain game against this gentleman here, Sergej Rachmaninoff. Not the actual Russian composer, as he's been dead for some 70 years, but a random gentleman online, or maybe a woman, I don't know. I couldn't find any info. I even clicked on the profile and there's no info. But it's quite the game, and it's actually a suggestion from Nepomniachtchi for me to show this game. As you can see here, I'll just play this out for you.
Rook. Yeah,
yeah, it finally worked. Yeah.
Such a masterpiece. Wow.
Yeah, okay, this should be published. Like, okay, AGADMATOR should make a review of this game for sure.
So there you have it, as it comes as a suggestion from him, and he is currently leading the FIDE candidates tournament. I thought it'd be a good idea to actually show this game. So without further ado, let's check it out. And for those of you who don't know what a hand and brain is, it means that one player says a move, but not the exact move. But for example, Dubov wants to play knight to f3, he will only say knight. And of course, Nepo has to figure out whether it's knight h3, f3, knight c3, or knight to a3. So he only says the piece or the pawn, and the other guy has to figure out what he wants to do with that. So in some positions, it's fairly straightforward, but in difficult positions when you're low on time and any knight jump is possible, it's not that straightforward. So let's see what happens here as they open with f4. So the bird's opening is on the board. We have knight to f6 and now d4. Sorry about that, d4, something called the Canard variation, and it's basically the same if you play like d4 knight f6 and then throw in f4. So sort of an Indian game. We have d5 by Rachmaninoff and now e3. We have g6 and now c3, and here you have sort of like a reverse stonewall setup. We have bishop to g7 and now a4, and this is something very interesting as this move has never been played before. A lot of moves have been attempted here, but a4 is a new move, so already as of move 5 we have a completely new game. So we have castles by black and now even a5, grabbing more space, which is normal because one player says pawn and you have to push a pawn, so it doesn't make sense to play a5. And in this game, Dubov was the brain and Nepo was the hand. So here we have bishop to f5, and now comes b4. And no, this b4 is not the delayed Evans gambit. It's actually something that I've decided to call the frying pan attack, as here you can see you have this sort of a frying pan thing going on. There you have it, the handle and the actual pan. Could be a lot of things, like could be a turtle if you want, but I thought a frying pan was more fierce. So let's go with that. This is the frying pan attack. We have e6 and now knight to f3. White also needs to start developing some pieces, castle, and figure out what white wants to do. So knight c6 and bishop to e2 now. We have knight to e7, something remaneuvering the knight a bit, knight b to d2, and now knight to c8. So the knight wants to come to d6, hence the all the horsing around. We have a6 by white, trying to create some weaknesses here on the queen side, and now b6. Of course, black doesn't want to give the white rook a semi-open a file. Knight to e5, grabbing that nice central square, and now knight to e4. Black does the same. Here, white trades, or rather, white trade. Knight captures, b captures, and now h4. So here a very aggressive move from Nepo and Dubov, offering the g2 pawn, but it could be dangerous grabbing the g2 pawn. Then you can attack the bishop, bishop goes back, and then you get the h5 move and you open up the h file. A lot of good things could happen here. So instead, black decides to kick away the knight from the e5 square, knight back to f3, and now h6. So h5 can be met with g5, not allowing the h file to open up. We have g4 now. These gentlemen are preparing g5, which would result in opening up the files toward the black king, and knight to d6 now. An excellent square for the knight. We have rook to g1. Now g5 is coming, so black decides to push g5 himself, or herself, as we don't know who commands the black pieces. We do know, however, that this particular individual is from Canada, or so it says on the Chess24 profile. So g5, and now rook to a2. d2. A useful rook here. In the long run, you don't want the rook on a1 since the bishop is on g7, and you can easily shift this rook to the king side also to help out with the attack. Rook to c8 by black, and now bishop to a3. In the future, ideas like b5 will be possible, just opening up this diagonal, so black decides to stop this, b5, and now king to d2, something very interesting. So king d2, the king is now marching to the queen side where it's going to be a lot safer. c6 by black, strengthening the center, and now king to c1, wiggling in between those light squares that the bishop controls. Queen to e7, and now comes king to b2. So the king will be much safer here. And here, king to f7. Something very interesting is happening here. Knight to d2. The knight now can come to b3, then to c5 later on. And king to e8. So here you have a very interesting situation where white did not castle, and then he just artificially castled his king to the queen side. And black castled to the king side and then just brought his king back into the center of the board. Something you don't see quite often. But in a hand and brain, a lot of good things will happen. So knight b3, preparing that knight to c5 maneuver, and here black strikes in the center with e5. So very, very interesting, this whole artificial castling by both sides, and uncastling. Like this is I don't think we've ever had this, like you castle and then you artificially uncastle. So knight to c5, an excellent square for this knight now, and e captures on f4. We have e captures, and now, interestingly, the engine gives king f7 back to g8 as the absolute best moves for black, which is, I don't know, kind of funny. But here we have knight to c4 check by black, and this gives Dubov and Nepo a lot of well, cool ideas. So bishop captures on c4, b captures, and now finally, as the b pawn moved, we already said that b5 was played to prevent white from playing b5. So here b5. Now there are a lot of threats here. If you're not careful, if you just play something like c captures on b5, you might run into sorry, not b5. If you go for something like yeah, b5 and then c captures on b5, you might run into something like knight captures on e4, opens up a discovery towards the queen, and after, let's say, queen captures, rook e1 just traps the queen. So not fun to play black in this position. So here we have rook to b8, and here just knight to b7. Of course, you don't want to allow this rook to be on the same file as your rook. So knight to b7 now, opening up an attack towards the queen, and the rook on f8 after the queen moves. So queen to c7, and now even bishop to d6. So very, very, very greedy here, going after both of the rooks. Queen to c8, and now just f5. Really, really exciting stuff here. Not being greedy and going for either of the rooks right away, because black cannot defend both of them. So here black decides to go rook captures on b7. He wants to open up some lines in front of the white king and hopefully get some sort of an attack going, while it's still not too late. We have a captures on b7, queen captures, and now king to a1. Sort of getting the king away from the b file, but just capturing also makes sense, since, for example, after c captures on b5, you can just go back and nothing is really happening. The bishop covers this square. But okay, better safe than sorry, of course. So king to a1, or rather, as well, as one player said king, maybe he thought about something else, but you know, none of the squares look all that appealing. So king to a1 was played, and now comes c captures on b5. So grabbing that pawn, and now rook to h1, preparing to capture, bust open the h file, and also offering the rook here. But grabbing that would simply allow white to take control of the e file. Not something you want to do. So rook to f7, saving the rook. Black finds a good move, and now h captures on g5. F captures on g5, and now rook to e1, pinning that bishop here. So rook d7, attacking the bishop on d6, and now bishop to e5. Bishop to c5 is also an idea for a couple of moves now, just going after that a7 pawn. But okay, we have bishop to e5, and now bishop back to f8. A great move by black, not allowing this capture and grabbing hold of this diagonal. b4 is definitely coming. So f6 now, just you know, pushing your passed pawn, also opening up some files and diagonals here. It's hard to imagine that white will be able to use them, but you never know. It's a blitz game, so anything can happen. And here b4. black continues with his plan, and now even f7 with check, taking the rook away from there. Capturing with the king is actually perfectly fine, but it's very dangerous because it allows rook captures on e4. D captures and queen to f1 check, and now, I don't know, it's not something you want to calculate in a blitz game. King e8, queen captures on c3, c4, and now it's a crazy position. Who knows what's happening here. So instead, after this f7 check, rook captures on f7 is played, and now comes queen to a4 with check. Rook d7 blocking, and now comes rook to f1. So what do you do here? Simple b captures on c3. And now the problem for white is that both b2 square and b1 square are covered by the pawn and by the bishop. So you have to be very careful here. You don't want to miss out on queen b2 checkmate, queen b1 checkmate. Also, if the queen and rook move from here, queen to anywhere on the a file will be checkmate. So white has to be very careful here. So rook 8 to f2, now threatening to pick up the bishop here, bishop to e7, just getting out of the way. And here bishop to g7. We have king to d8, trying to run away with the king. And here we have a very, very nice move, rook to f8 with check. And now, what do you play here? Well, the problem is, if you try to run away with king to c7, it simply doesn't work. Queen a5 check. Queen to b6, and now this very nasty bishop to e5 check. King c6, and now queen to a4 check. King to b7, for example, and now rook to b8 will be checkmate. The bishop now covers that square. So very tricky to play. King to c7 loses, so bishop captures on f8, only good move. And here comes rook captures on f8 with check. And now feel free to pause the video here. You have the black pieces, win this position and find the best move for black and win this position while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting king to e7, as after this, black is winning this game. But it's not easy finding this as king to e7. It's not enough just to see king e7. Also, after queen to a3 check, you also have to find rook to d6. It's the only move that wins, because if you try something like king to e6, you're gonna get checkmated. Rook to f6 is checkmate. So it's extremely difficult to find all the correct moves here. So rook to d6 would allow for the game to continue. And then you really don't have a move, because like we said, these squares are covered and white is without a move. Queen to b1 is the threat of checkmate. Once you prevent that, queen anywhere will be checkmate. For example, queen a6, this is covered, so not a lot of fun for white here. But you have to find those very tricky moves, rook to d6, king to e7 and rook d6, so it's not all that easy. So here king to c7 was played, but now there's a problem. And also I forgot to congratulate to everyone who found it. So whoever found king to c7, congratulations, as now the game is lost. What I meant to say was congratulations to everyone who found king to e7. But after king to c7, now white is winning. And now after bishop to e5 check, which was played in the game, there's not all that much for black to do. King to b6 was played. We have rook to f6 with check, and it was in this position that Sergej Rachmaninoff, or gentleman playing behind that name, resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. With best defense, it's mate in 4, but just to show you, as I know a lot of you guys enjoy it when I show it all the way to mate. You don't have anywhere to go. The king cannot move, so you either have to give up the queen right away, or you can give up the rook first. The rook captures on d6. Now you have to give up the queen. Rook captures or queen captures, doesn't really matter. King here, check. King has to move to a8. The bishop covers this, and now rook to c8 will be checkmate. So yeah, after this wonderful series of moves, like the king had a choice here. Like we could even use this as a thumbnail. Maybe I'll use something else. But yeah, it all came down to this basically. After king to c7, just a nice check, and the game ended in this position here. So yeah, that's the brilliancy, or as Dubov said, such a masterpiece. So I do hope you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, what I found extremely funny was, like, if some 5 years ago someone told me that someone who is currently leading the FIDE candidates tournament would, even jokingly even suggest that I show a game they played, you know, I couldn't even imagine such a thing. And you know, make no mistake, you know, Nepo could very well have been joking, like even making fun of my you know, presentations and such, but doesn't really matter, because I I just thought it was well, hilarious, basically, that you know, someone on that level would even know I exist. So it's pretty crazy. I mean, who knows what the future brings. But yeah, so that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry about not wearing a hoodie for this video. I thought, since it's an actual person, and I mean, it's probably possible to find out who he is. I decided that maybe hoodie is not the way to go for this video, but you know, for the other videos, of course, we will be wearing a hoodie. So yeah, once again, I do hope you guys enjoyed it. I'd like to thank Thomas Jager, As Martins, Michael Ben, Timothy Guyen, and Cohen Kam for contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.